It's one of my favorite stories to tell. Emphasizes why culture really does matter. So Alexander the Great, from about 13 to 19, was mentored by the one and only Aristotle. See, King Philip II, who was Alexander's father, he knew the importance of mentorship, and him conquering the world at the time. I mean, not nearly as much as Alexander, but he was a little too busy to be a father figure in a sense. So Alexander got mentored by Aristotle, how to ride horses, how to think, and so on and so forth. Well, from about 19 and a half or so, when King Philip was murdered, actually, by someone very close to him, but I won't go there because it's kind of awkward story. Alexander took his forces, and from about 19 and a half or 20 to 32, he never lost one battle. About 40,000 or so men conquered the known worlds from Macedonia, Greece, all of Asia, North India, Egypt, without losing a battle. I mean, insane. He resented his father for somewhat not being there. It's been said that they called him, son of a god, and the Oracle of Delphi actually put that on his shoulders, that he was a son of a god. So he conquered the known world, which arguably led to the spread later, hundreds of years later, to Christianity, because he changed the cultures of all those societies he conquered. Ptolemy the First, who was his number one security guard, I guess you could say, who was also mentored by Aristotle, who also learned and was drawn in by the wisdom of knowledge, the wisdom of information. He ended up preceding Alexander when Alexander died. His whole empire crumbled. They killed his son, they killed his wife, they killed his family, and it broke up. So Ptolemy I raced to Egypt and basically took it over. He did what Alexander didn't. He spent the rest of his life acquiring all the knowledge of the known world. Because see, Alexander, just like Aristotle, loved literature, loved books, loved learning. And arguably that's one of the reasons that he never lost a battle, because he was so curious and interested to learn. He was living his own information age. Well, Ptolemy also drew from that experience, right? Became very wise. And after Alexander died, years later, he spent the rest of his life acquiring all the known books of the world, hoarding them in the Alexandrian libraries. And by the time he passed, he had actually written his own book because he realized the power of transcribing his values to create culture. And he actually took so many books from other countries, and then he would borrow them, almost like stealing from the library, and then burn them, so that those countries didn't have the books anymore, like Greece and whatnot, and put them in his library, and they had 500,000 scrolls. Well, that, and the years that followed, the generation that followed, that spurred an information age of its own right. And hundreds of years later, people were still working tirelessly in the Alexandrian libraries, in their own information age of sorts, and this is where they discovered that the Earth wasn't flat. This is where he discovered modern sciences. And if we draw from history, and we can learn from history that what Ptolemy I did, right? Mentee of Alexander and Aristotle, who, Aristotle, mentee of Plato, Aristotle, who was a mentee of Socrates. They were all voracious readers and knowledge seekers and conquerors, and they shifted culture with their culture, right? With their, not only their sword, but their pen, right? As Alexander Hamilton said, it's not the sword, it's the pen. Today, in vain, we have more information on our cell phones that 7-year-olds have at their middle school than all of the Alexandrian libraries, with millions of books that people just slaved over 2,000 years ago. And we squander it. We are in another information age, right? It started in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down officially. Communism was over. The information age started, the internet is here, and you have to think of the internet being here as a giant Alexandrian library, and yet we squander it. So you just got to look in the mirror as a culture. What is more important to us? Kim Kardashian's ass or learning? Curiosity. It's what breeds intelligence, what breeds awareness, it's what breeds abundance, it's what breeds non-conformity and non-slavery. It is what humanity is all about, and we've seen it through history with Alexandria libraries. We've seen it with Gutenberg and the printing press, and the West taking over the power of the East through being able to print books like crazy. We've seen it in the Renaissance, and we see it throughout history. We are seeing it right now in front of us. It is staring us in the face. Your iPhone is a product of that. So take advantage of the valuable free information that you have, because millions of people have died for you to be able to have that. From the age of Alexander to the age of Ptolemy I and all his heirs, who ended with Cleopatra herself, people have died and spilt blood for you to be able to have the information that they fought for. So stop being a dumbass and get your culture right.